happen. All right. So I was wondering, what can a sales and marketing coach actually do for my marketers? There are long-winded answers and there are short answers. And those of you that know me know that I tend to be long-winded. I'm going to try and keep it fairly simple. The fact is, if you have a product or a service that everybody wants and you don't have any competition, I probably can't do a whole lot for you because you're in luck. Lots of customers and no competitors. The fact is that that's probably kind of like when your kids say they saw a unicorn. We all know that's highly unlikely, to say the least. You're not going to find yourself in a situation where you have no competitors and lots of customers lining up at your door. It does continue to amaze me that owners, restoration owners, and even some GMs that are extremely tolerant and forgiving and very generous with their marketers and don't hold them accountable. My experience over the past dozen years or so of coaching is that when they don't want to be held accountable, they need to find another home. They need to go down the road. You need to sever your ties with them, because regardless of what they say and claim and even do, accountable marketers produce, and those that will not be accountable, they simply don't produce. You're not a charity. If you're going to be a charity, you would have started a soup kitchen or something else. Every marketer in almost every single market where I work with clients, and that's from the Northwest coast to the Southwest coast and all the way across the US, I work with marketers, and I can tell you that one right here in Tampa, Florida, not only a couple hours from me, consistently produced $2 million a year in revenue. I work with a marketer up in the Washington, D.C. area, and that marketer consistently produced $4 million a year in revenue, attributable to her, absolutely and positively. So when a marketer says, and these are the types of things you're going to get, hey boss, it's a bad time of the year. Hey boss, it's the holidays. People don't want to buy during the holidays. It's been too rainy. It's been too cold. It's been too hot. There's been too much snow. It's too icy, too windy. There's always some weather excuse. Hey man, I had to tell you, boss, the economy is really bad. I can tell you, I heard that in 2008, 2009, 2010. I heard that a lot. The economy was bad. Yet at that time, I had marketers consistently producing $1 million a year or more. You hear the excuse, people are focused on vacations during the summertime, just like people are focused on Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's during the December, Thanksgiving or November, December months. Then you hear the excuse, well, school's starting. They're getting ready to go back to school, and people are dealing with that. And it just never ends, month after month after month of never-ending excuses. Those marketers, first off, they need to have the proper training, and if they fail to be accountable at that point, you need to get rid of them. One of the things that a sales and marketing coach does is we act as a consultant to help provide useful, helpful, valuable information to the marketer to help them do their job better. They're going to run into challenges, issues, headaches, problems, difficult customers. And we help them create the bridge to solve those. Often I find myself as a sales and marketing coach helping to onboard a new marketer, identifying in my first 2 or 3 or 4 meetings with my marketers, I help identify their strengths and their weaknesses. What things do they need trained on? Ultimately, we help marketers develop their skills and achieve their quotas. I can go on and tell you even more, but to wrap that up in a nutshell, your marketers, unless they are a very rare exception to the rule, aren't going to just do this automatically on their own. So I'm essentially playing the role of a sales and marketing manager, holding marketers accountable. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. We're going to head to the next question. I get this a lot when we're especially talking about large loss. Does it ever make sense to work with another restoration company on a project? The short answer and the long answer is yes, it does make sense many times. The single biggest problem that most restorers have is the thing that makes them so valuable is they have this drive and this internal desire to do well, but they're also very highly motivated. And one of the things that's always been a catchphrase, and Dick and I have been dealing with this for over a decade with different clients, is the idea of let's just say yes first and figure it out afterwards. That's always a great model for our industry, but it's also something that puts you way out there on a limb. And sometimes the very things that you need to make a project work are the things that someone else possesses. You know, for instance, more than half of our CREST clients don't have suitable amount of restoration equipment to do a large loss, to do a major commercial project. They might have a decent amount of air scrubbers and air movers and DUs to do their regular residential work. But then if they get a large loss and they might need, let's just say 500 air movers and 100 DUs, they don't have that. Nor do they have any resources for procuring that information and that supply of equipment. So they'll call us for that. Once they get the equipment, the thing that they always find is that they're having a very difficult time documenting it all, keeping track of it all, moving the equipment around within the units if it's a 30 or 40 room hotel loss. So I always say, in situations where you're a little overwhelmed, either personnel or equipment wise, it's always best to work with another company rather than just trying to go out and get the resources yourself. Think of it this way. Every single time you can't answer a question or you have an issue on a job that you feel uncomfortable about, you're literally taking money out of your pocket. I don't care if you're the PM on the job. I don't care if you're the owner of the company. I don't even care if you're the marketer. Money's coming out of all of your pockets if you're putting yourself in a position where you're not 100% confident and comfortable. And I always call it getting paid for on-the-job training. If you partner with a company that has a little more experience than you do, both on large loss or maybe just on managing more and larger projects, that to me is a win-win because you can make a nice profit on that job while learning. And maybe then the next time you get one of those jobs, you don't have to work with a bigger company. You can work with a smaller resource provider and feel a little comfortable. That's not something that happens a lot of times in most industries. That learning on the job is usually a very costly experience. And we found that especially on cat losses, regional times when you'll have a lot of losses like what's going on in Texas and Oklahoma in the last month or so, that's a really, really important time to be willing to reach out to others and to work with other companies. Yes, at the end of the day, you're not going to make the same percentages that you would make on your normal business. And you might look at it as saying, oh, I'm just giving up money that I didn't need to give up. But in the long run, you're spreading the risk out. And as someone who worked on Wall Street for a long time, many, many times that risk reward ratio gets to the point where the risk isn't worth the big reward. And it's much safer for you in the long term to manage that risk by spreading it out and taking less of it in exchange for less of a profit. That's okay. That's, it's not a bad thing to admit that you can't do it all yourself. That's always a really good sign of a competent manager or a competent owner. And that's why I love the idea of partnering with another restoration company anytime you feel like you're out a little bit over your skis. Thanks, Dick.
Bill, you did not address bringing in outside resources, the big guns, other than, your local restoration contractors.
Yeah, the idea of partnering with another restoration company your size is kind of what I was addressing. We always hope that when you do need anything, regarding larger equipment or more expert personnel, companies like Scott Tarpley's companies, the DEI or the drying team, those are your vital first resources. Anytime you need a desiccant and your company doesn't happen to own a desiccant, that should be your first call. Anytime you need somebody to help you because the scope and the extent of the loss might be really severe, give us a call right away. And that's where we can provide you with some of these resource companies. Those are vital, and those should always be first on your list. I was just addressing the idea of actually partnering with other companies like ours, where a lot of guys are very standoffish about even partnering with their competitor within their own little space. They get really squeamish about it. But yes, Dick, that's a great point. Always reach out to those larger resource providers.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. So another question. What are some good customer skills that we should teach our technicians? I am sure that all of you have some great ideas. I just want to hit on a couple points that are often overlooked. We tend sometimes to take that whole thing for granted. And when we take some areas of this for granted, we tend to leave money on the table. And some of those things that cause us to leave money on the table, and they're not the kinds of things you would normally think of, like, oh, I didn't add that into the line item or into the invoice or the scope or the estimate, but there are things like showing up late for an appointment. Often the technician doesn't even understand that when he or they show up late for an appointment, they're leaving money on the table, or very likely. If they provide poor or little communication, they don't thoroughly explain the reality. Another one is setting the correct expectations. Yesterday, I wrote a 2-page article, a blog article about setting the correct expectations. And this applies to your senior project manager, your sales estimator, even the marketer out there in the world. But often the technicians are forgotten for part of the training of themselves being taught how to set the correct expectations. When you fail to set the correct expectations, you end up leaving money on the table. How so? By the poor communication or improper expectations means the customers are not going to be happy. And if the customer is not happy, they're going to demand more of you, or they're going to refuse to pay you what all they should be paying you. So proper expectations that you teach the technician how to set. I recently had a new heating and air conditioning system installed in my house. Not only did I get a text confirming the appointment for the next day, I got a text that next morning at 8 a.m. telling me the technicians were on their way. When the technicians got here, they took about 10 minutes to go through a laundry list of things that they would be doing and how that would impact me. When they left for lunch, they told me they were leaving for lunch and how long they would be gone. And it just went right through all the steps. They set my expectations so that at the end of the day, when the air conditioning was working again beautifully with a new system, I wrote them a check. That's setting the right expectations. Even little things that we often don't teach our technicians. Don't walk on the customer's lawn. Don't flip your cigarette butts out across their yard. Don't disrespect their property. The usual things that you learned in other training programs like, having a business card, knocking on the door and stepping back, asking for permission to bring your tools in. The goal, of course, is to create a raving fan. The bottom line is we lose customers. Think about this. Here's the numbers. We lose customers because 1% of them die. 3% move away. 13% change their interests and get motivated to do business with another company, your competitor. 14% are just simply dissatisfied with your services for whatever reason. But stunningly, 69% are upset with the way they are treated. And your technicians can go a long way toward properly treating your customers and your clients. It's okay to talk about the weather. It's okay to compliment their flowers and their landscaping. It's okay to ask them if they have any other concerns. It's okay to thank them for calling your company. When the air conditioning technicians left the other day, I think it was on a Monday. No, it was last Thursday. I lose track of the days. What they said to me was, thanks so much for calling our company. That by the technicians is rare, but it is so vital. It made me feel good. And then the obvious ones, please and thank you. Billy?
Dick, that's really great. I'm really glad you brought that up because we've had so many issues over the last couple of years that you and I have been trying to deal with on that relationship between the marketing people and the production people, because the marketing people tend to be very, very relationship centric. And for whatever reason in our industry, we tend to find that the people who have the least amount of social skills end up on the production teams, and it causes a big rift in the companies that you and I spend a lot of time trying to piece together. So that's really good information.
Yep.
Now that COVID restrictions are lessening, should I consider traveling to classes or trade shows? Again, the fact of the COVID lessening and the risk that you will be taking is totally on you. I certainly am not a doctor, nor can I assess what your own physical conditions are or the risks you're going to run into. That said, when things do get to the point where you feel comfortable, I do highly recommend getting out of your comfort zone and heading out to a trade show or to a class for a couple of reasons. number one, I call it the rubber band effect. Everybody's been kind of sitting at home, and that rebound of when you go back out, these trade shows are going to be pretty crowded. They're going to be really probably very well attended. And there's going to be some things that we haven't seen or experienced in a while. There are a lot of things that have happened in our industry in the last year and a half that have greatly changed the way we can do business. A lot more remote style monitoring, remote documentation, going to a lot more of that electronic type of paperwork. That's gotten a lot more prevalent, and it's also getting a lot cheaper and easier to use, more user friendly, because demand and situations dictate that the market changes and evolves, and that's what's happening now. For those of you who are staying on top of the latest and greatest, you'll know that both major equipment manufacturers now have basically remote monitoring for their LGRs. So just things like that. So I do recommend getting out there. The things you're going to learn at the trade shows are going to be things that people have experienced both good and bad over the last year. So it gives you the opportunity, not only at the classes, but also at walking around and just talking to other restorers, getting their stories. We learn so much from the experiences of others, and hopefully we can take some things home with us. Traveling to classes, as much as Dick and I have enjoyed doing our remote learning and doing these webinars, nothing takes the place of a really good hands-on, one-on-one classroom session. And we had a very successful class, back in February, and we were really excited to be able to offer that. And we are offering another one in May for our marketing certification class. I don't ever think that there's a substitute for the hands-on, because the interaction is so much greater when you're in person than it is on the Zoom meeting. And once again, you can get as much as you want out of the class when it's just a lecture. But for anybody who did attend the class that Dick and I were able to put on, the interactions that happen during the breaks and during lunches and dinners are the places where you really gather some really important tidbits and get some great connections. So I do highly recommend scheduling it into your itinerary. The two biggest events for our industry are events that are put on that are called the Experience. This year, there's one in April out in Charleston, and then there's always one in September, usually just after Labor Day, out in Las Vegas. They're 3-day events, very large trade show exhibitions, and all of the major players in the industry are there. There are going to be some decent, at least for the April event, there's going to be some decent conversations and topics of discussion if you want to be a full event attendee. But if not, Dick and I have done it for over a dozen years, just walking around the trade show room, seeing the latest and greatest, and meeting and shaking hands with people is worth those couple of days investment for you. So I highly recommend getting yourself back out there when safety and your own personal health situation permits. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Bill. I get this question a lot. I get this question, gosh, probably once a week. There is always a restoration contractor calling me saying, hey man, I hear you do commercial training. I just had a call yesterday from a guy that wanted to attend our next commercial event. The question is, how do I get, and the key word here is consistent, large loss or commercial jobs? I can tell you that it's not the luck of the draw. I can tell you that even if your company is first in the Google search at the top of the page, even if you're buying or paying for investing in pay-per-click ads, the challenge is, how do you get to be top of mind for your particular verticals, those commercial property or industry types that are within your comfort zone or your bailiwick. And I can tell you, luck can certainly get you an occasional job, maybe once a year, a couple times a year, they're going to land in your lap. I just talked to a contractor a few weeks ago who said, oh my gosh, this company used us almost 20 years ago on a disaster in their hotel. And guess what? We haven't talked to them since, and they just had another disaster, and we just got another job, another $250,000 job. But you know what we talked, and that owner and I talked about the fact that he really needs something more consistent. Said, I can't wait 20 years for another $250,000 commercial job. And there is a methodology, there is a process to achieve that. The simple answer is PREP, P-R-E-P, or Priority Response Emergency Plan. It's a pre-disaster program that I developed and created 15, 18 years ago, and reinstated it about 12 years ago when I started doing full-time coaching, and it has continued to evolve. It's kind of like a living document, and we've continued to perfect it so that today we have literally dozens upon dozens, maybe 100 contractors around the country that combined have thousands upon thousands of commercial properties in the PREP program. These are commercial properties that the contractor has an agreement with, that commercial property will call them when a disaster happens. The Priority Response Emergency Plan is a pretty extensive program. There is a specific process and philosophy on how you sell it, how you present it, and then how you maintain or build that relationship. That PREP program covers in detail the steps of what vertical industries are first and foremost the ones you should tackle first. We cover in depth how to approach a hotel, who to see, what to say, what their pain points are. We even teach you the lingo or the language of the hotel industry so you know how to interact with them. We cover nursing homes, we cover churches, we cover hospitals, we cover medical facilities other than hospitals. We cover property management locations like commercial plazas or strip plazas or industrial plazas. And so the Priority Response Emergency Plan program has evolved to today, that where I get clients that call me usually or text me sometimes on a weekend and say, OMG, I just got $100,000. I just got a $200,000 commercial loss on one of my PREP clients. And we know that it takes a couple hundred commercial clients to maintain or create and maintain a consistent business. And that does take a lot of work, but the reward is huge. It's going to add easily $1 million or $2 million to your bottom line when you methodically go out and implement the priority response emergency plan, our prep plan, which is exclusive to the CREST network. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. People have heard this phrase before, but what is fear of success? A lot of times I'll use this phrase when I'm coaching owners, and the owners kind of take it back and say, well, I've heard of fear of failure, but why would we be afraid of being successful? Well, a lot of times human beings get used to routine and we get used to a niche that we're in. And I've seen this many, many times. Unfortunately, Dick and I get called in more often than not when companies are having difficulties. We're never really called in when companies are going well and somebody really wants to jump to the next level. The assumption is that if people want to jump to the next level, that they've been successful on their own, they don't need a coach and they'll just do it. That ends up not working out because they're really good at the things they're currently doing, and maybe that's a stretch to go to that next level. But most times companies that are doing a really difficult time of things, it's happening not because they're struggling as much as the owner is struggling. Let me give you an example. You're $1 million company and you're structured the way you want to be structured, and you want to go to be a $3 million company. Well, the way a $1 million company operates and feels to an owner is totally different than a $3 million company. You could be what they call an owner operator and be $1 million company. To be a $3 million company, you really can't be out there on all the jobs, involved in every piece of the process. You have to develop processes and you have to trust personnel to be able to go out there and do the things that you were normally doing yourself. In order to do that, that's a different kind of mindset and a different set of skills. The most important part of that equation is the trust factor. There are people who literally say, what happens if this works? Now I've got more responsibility. Now I've got more pressure on me to keep this machine going. And it felt so comfortable just doing that $1 million business where you knew what you were doing every day and you had no responsibilities to other people. You know, we've worked with companies that started with 6 or 7 employees and got themselves up to 30 or 40. And we had an instance where the owner literally couldn't handle it and had to sell his company. He was suffering through a version of fear of success because he got to the point where he was 5 times what he was, but he couldn't handle what the pressures of that new scenario was putting on him. He couldn't handle that new mindset and that new lifestyle for himself, and he had to sell the company. Now, the good thing is he realized that and he sold the company before it all imploded on him. So you still have to be in touch with your feelings. But fear of success generally means that you're comfortable where you're at. You don't want to do what's necessary to get to the next level because you're afraid of that commitment and that responsibility level. You know, think about that guy who says, no, I'm really happy just being a technician. I don't want to be a crew leader and I don't want to be a supervisor. I'm just happy where I'm at. Is he lazy, or is he afraid to be put in a position where he thinks he's going to be outside of his own skill and comfort zone? You have to think about yourself and whether you as a manager or you as an owner are thinking that same thing. Are you going to be comfortable just doing what you're doing? Or are you going to embrace these new challenges that lie ahead? That is the only way to grow. And that's the only way to accomplish a new level of success. But remember, with it comes a lot of responsibilities. And if you're not prepared for them, then that fear of success really will hinder you going forward. If any of you want to work on this, I've taken quite a few motivational classes and psychology classes for coaching youth sports and for coaching managers and owners. And I would be glad to sit down and discuss this as well. So please, if you think you're suffering through this and it might be the thing that's keeping you from moving ahead, please give me a holler. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. And let's see if I can move this. There we go. This was a question or a comment that came about a week ago. We're trying to be different than our competition, which is always a good thing, by the way. And what are some of the best ways that my marketers can make this happen? You know, it's very, very difficult to identify those things that can make you different than your competitor. Having said that, it's extremely vital that you are different from your competitor. When 10 marketers walk into an insurance agent's office and they all seem the same, they all say the same thing, they all bring their own little tchotchke item, their refrigerator magnet, their pen, their pad, the pencil and notepad, I mean, I've seen piggy banks, with the company logo on them. I've literally over the years seen hundreds upon hundreds of different gimmicks or tchotchke items. And even those they're common. Everybody seems to be giving them out, but those things make you the same as your competitor. Often what makes you different is the words you say. I have been on a campaign with my marketers for the past couple years now to use the phrase or to learn to memorize what I call a summary move. If you attended our restoration marketing specialist course last month, we talked about that summary move. It used to be called, and in other areas or other industries, it's still called the elevator speech or the elevator pitch. But that summary move, which is the kind of the initial move in a chess game, that's your initial strategy. And that summary move should be, and it's real easy, you can be different by introducing yourself. Hi, I'm Dick Wagner with the CREST Network. But then the next two sentences separate you from the competitors. The next two sentences are, we help your policyholders. This is if you're speaking with an insurance agent. We help your policyholders recover quickly with the least amount of cost and inconvenience. And we believe in making the insurance agent the hero to help with client retention. Those two phrases or those two sentences are different than your competitors. Your competitors don't say those things. They don't use the summary move. And I have had, when I've had resistance from marketers who would call me and say, geez, I don't feel comfortable saying that. That just isn't me. That doesn't feel natural. First, I have to remind them that those actors and actresses that are saying a script, it didn't feel comfortable and natural the first time they said it, or the second, or the third, or the fifth, but they repeat it over and over and over again until it sounds natural. When we watch a TV show or a picture on the big screen and we see those actors and actresses saying their lines, it's believable. We can almost be transported there because they have said it so much that they feel comfortable with it. And that's what happens when they repeat it and learn that summary move. There's also one for plumbers as well, and one for carpet cleaners if you're going to call on some select carpet cleaners. However, I can tell you that the marketers have called me up and said, oh my God, Dick, oh my God, I just can't believe it. I used that summary move on an insurance agent today, and I've been calling on them for 6 months and they wouldn't give me the time of day. And they invited me into their office to talk. That's the breakthrough. That's what a summary move does for you. That's what being different does for you. Because I can tell you, out of 50 marketers in the territory that you serve, out of 50 of them, probably barely one knows what the summary move is and how to properly say it or present it. You have to speak to their pains. You have to address their emotions. I have said this 1,000 times over the years, but people want to be their emotions triggered. You have to reach their emotions. People make decisions. People buy based on their emotions. And once they bought, then they rationalize that with logic, but they've already bought. So there are lots of ways we can teach you how to be different, but let's start with the very first one, and that is the correct summary move. That will separate you from the competition. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. What are the two biggest mistakes I might be making in trying to collect my invoices? I actually wrote the answers on this just so that you can internalize it and believe it much more than just my words. First mistake that almost everybody makes in trying to collect their invoices is talking to the adjuster or the third party without the homeowner in the process. And I don't mean just on the phone, I mean even with emails. Guys, we make this mistake all the time, and I say it until I'm blue in the face, and we still keep making the mistake. You have to include the homeowner in all of your communications with the insurance company. Remember, our relationship contractually is with the homeowner. The insurance company's relationship contractually is with the homeowner. We do not have a relationship with the adjuster or the insurance company. Let's make sure all of our communication is taking place with the homeowner. They have the most leverage in pushing for your money to be released. The trick that the insurance company uses against us is something that we created. Years ago, the insurance company always wanted to do the process the right way. They wanted to make sure they paid the homeowner and they communicated with the homeowner. But restorers got really smart, and restorers said, well, we know what's better for us is to be talking directly to the adjusters, because the homeowners don't really know how to explain our bill. So we said to the homeowner, don't worry about it. We'll take care of everything. We'll talk to the adjuster for you. Well, we did that. And the insurance companies, not being idiots, realized, hey, this is really good, because they just took the important legally obligated person out of the mix. So now we could talk to these guys and we could try to beat them up because we've got the money. They don't have the money. And let's just see if they're willing to take less. And of course, by virtue of what happens in an industry where you have a really, really high percentage of good quality people and a couple of people who are looking to make a quick buck, those quick buck people pretty much established the norm for our industry, where the insurance company thinks as soon as we talk with them that we're going to negotiate, that we're going to just take less to get our money in our hands now. Well, we've created that poison for ourselves, and that's what's happened, guys. We talking to the adjusters allows them to beat us up on our bills without any repercussions. If they did that while the homeowner was involved, the homeowner would kind of see and hear that they're stalling and delaying, and they would want to get more involved. So we have to do a really good job to educate our clients, our homeowners, about the process. We have to tell them, hey, ultimately, you're responsible for collecting payment. Ultimately, you have to be the ones to put pressure on the insurance companies to release the money to us. That's going to help us out in the long run. That's so much more important in the long run for our health of our business than saying, don't worry about it, guys. You don't know what language we use, so we're going to talk directly to your insurance company. That's been hurting us for probably 15 years or so, and it's going to continue to hurt us even more so going forward. The number two problem that most of us have, and it's becoming a major legal issue for a lot of restoration companies that you guys might not realize, is if we try to use policy language to justify our bill when we are talking to either the homeowner or the insurance company. What I mean by that is if we use phrases like, this should be a covered loss, or you should have enough under your coverage to be able to pay our bill. We don't want to ever use language that makes it sound like we're reading the insurance policy. Legally, there are only a handful of entities who are allowed to talk about the policy. Number one is the homeowner and the broker. The other parties would be the adjuster who works for the insurance company. A third party would be somebody who's called a public adjuster, who is an adjuster who works only for the policy holder. And then the only other party in most states who can talk about the policy itself would be a lawyer. Restoration companies are forbidden from talking about the language of the policy. Even if you think all you're doing is trying to justify your invoice, be really careful about using certain language like covered peril, or it's in a bucket of coverage. When you use those kinds of languages, you're actually doing what they call policy interpretation. And in a lot of states, that's illegal. Believe it or not, the language gets you in trouble because most insurance companies now are being coached that if the restorer starts using that language, they want us reported to the Department of Insurance in the state that we're operating in. Yes, this is happening. Guys are getting fined from the states for doing what they call illegal policy interpretation. Be really careful about this. Avoid using policy language. Kind of play dumb. Say, listen, I don't know what's in your policy. I just know this is my invoice. You should be arguing this with your adjuster. Now, make them get on the phone with you, and then you can argue the work you did, and you could tell the homeowner, listen, this is the work I did. I don't know if it's covered or not. If they're telling you it's not covered, maybe you should consult your broker or your agent. That would be a good first step, because those guys don't want to lose that client for selling them a policy that's not covered. So they can usually go to bat many times successfully against their own company's adjusters. So that would be a good way for them to do it in a way that allows you to get coverage on interpretation without you doing it yourself. So just remember, don't talk to anybody without the homeowner on the phone, and don't use policy language. That's really important. We make those two mistakes and it ends up costing us dearly in the long run. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Bill. I have one more slide, and I put this in here. Bill, you can speak to this as well, but it's a shameless plug for our next restoration marketing specialist certification course. It's coming up on May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It's an eye-opener for owners and marketers. It's going to be held in Atlanta, Georgia, and it is literally 22 hours of very intense marketing training. And it is the precursor, or the required course. The RMS course is the required course before you can attend the CMS course, which is the commercial marketing specialist course, which of course that's going to be held in Indianapolis in August. Bill, anything you want to add to that course info?
Not really, Dick, other than the fact that for years we've talked about the fact that we have training for managers, we have training for large loss, we have training for all of our technicians, and we don't have much training for our marketers. So to me, I think it's a very valuable course. The people who took it in February, I think the response we got was overwhelmingly positive, and I really think it's a way to allow your marketers to get not only a really good idea about consistent progress and work product that they're supposed to be performing, but it gives them a good eye opener to how the rest of the company operates. And a lot of times we make the mistake of isolating out the marketers from the rest of the company. So now it allows them to understand how production works and kind of gives them a good level playing field for when they're out there to understand the whole work of the project.
Thanks, Bill. On behalf of Bill and myself, we want to thank all of you for watching. This will be, it was recorded and it will go on the CREST network for you to review later on this afternoon. So thank you so much. I'm Dick Wagner, along with Bill Giannone. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Take care.